Welcome to Two Humans Talking, the podcast where we discuss the challenges of staying healthy in this modern, fast-paced world. I'm Tiffany Sims, your weight loss and high performance coach.
And I'm Chelsea Scroggins, your yoga teacher and motivational speaker. And today we have a wonderful guest, Miss Zoe. She's going to share her wonderful story with us and give us some wonderful resources that will help us all. And Miss Zoe, will you just introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is Zoe. I am from the UK. I'm actually a geography teacher by trade, but I'm a very keen runner and have been for a very long time. It's quite important to me.
I love that. And so how did I find Zoe? Where did she come from? She's in the UK. I'm in the US. And I was scrolling Instagram one day and a reel of hers popped up and it caught my attention. And I had seen that here's Zoe showing some pictures of her on her Peloton, doing some runs. And it was like the doctors told me I would never run again and walking would be painful. And she trained and finished a 100K ultra run. And for those of you who are not runners, that's a lot of miles. It's a lot of distance. And all of a sudden, I instantaneously got chills and was so inspired. And I was like, I have to have her on the podcast. People need to hear her story. I need to hear her story.
Me too.
So I'm really grateful that you agreed to come on the show with us today, Zoe. So do you mind sharing how you ended up in the hospital with them telling you would never run again?
Yeah, sure. I ran a lot when I was a child. I did, sort of school athletics and things like that. Once I went over to university, I guess I got lazy. I didn't really have the mental strength as a child to do particularly long distances. I was good at long distance, but long distance then was 1,500 meters, 3,000 meters, 10K at the most. So I never ran further than 10K as a child when I was competing. It wasn't until later I did start running again as a recreation as I was older. It wasn't until I was diagnosed with something called antiphospholipid syndrome, which is an autoimmune disorder. It causes recurrent miscarriage. In the UK, I don't know if you know this, you have to have the law has recently changed, but traditionally you had to have 3 miscarriages before there's any intervention because we have free healthcare, but they set limits on when that intervention occurs. So you have to go through 3 and they have to be consecutive miscarriages before any intervention will take place. So we had to go through 3 miscarriages before they would even do any tests to try and find out what was happening. And I basically used running as a tool to cope with the grief and the stress of that process. It wasn't something I could mentally manage. So I like to call it caging the rage.
Oh my God, I like that. I'm writing that down. If you're listening, write that down. Caging the rage.
So you have to have an outlet.
Oh my goodness. So for our non-runners, a 10K is 6.2 miles.
I actually do running miles, to be fair. I've never managed to stick that running miles. So I did 100K ultra, but it was 62 point something miles. So it ended up being 63.4 with wandering around checkpoints at the time. So it's about 62 miles, 100K.
Yeah.
Wow. My Garmin is still set to miles. I can't wean myself off it.
Hold on. I don't want to take away from the story of you finding your way back to running, but talking about health and mental health, I've experienced 1 miscarriage and that was a lot. No one can prepare you for that.
Yeah.
I think, how did you function?
Very badly for a while, very, very badly. My workplace wasn't really set up to deal with it. We had a kind of a male dominated senior leadership team. They didn't fully understand. They just sort of expected after you'd had your absence, because I actually ended up having to have surgery because my first miscarriage then wouldn't complete. And so then they just expected me to just come back after an operation, just be like, yeah, I'm amazing. And then obviously I endured 2 more while I was at work and still had to carry on working. So I wasn't functioning particularly well. I did try counselling, but I actually found that the counselling made it a lot worse. constantly rehashing or talking about what had happened. And all I wanted from counselling was some kind of functional advice on when I'm having anxiety, panic attacks. When I did have my first daughter, I started to get what they have tagged as maternal anxiety. And it just basically, I'm really terrified of losing my daughter because of the losses that I had gone through, and to the point where we went onto a pier. Do you know, like a pier by the sea?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I was holding my baby in a carrier, and I started to have a panic attack because I was afraid that I was going to drop my baby. It's not funny. Between the planks on the pier, I was hyperventilating, vomiting. I couldn't stand up. I couldn't walk. I had to get off the pier. I couldn't go on it. And
by the fear.
Yeah, and it was a completely irrational fear, but I absolutely couldn't control it in any way.
In the moment, was your logical brain telling you that all of this was dumb, and your emotions were like, no.
Your body just,
I'm feeling faint, I'm vomiting, but at the same point in time, my brain is going, don't be stupid. Like, your baby physically cannot fit down that gap.
But your body just
won't. No way.
When you have that trauma within you, your body just, you're holding it. And if you don't ever release it, you will literally cripple up like you just did. You'll vomit, like your body just, there's a sense that does it. And no matter how much your mind's like, don't act a fool. Don't do this. Your body's like, well, we're going for it.
It's happening. And sometimes you just got to accept it's happening. Basically running helped me through that, because I went to counselling, and like I said, in the UK, we do have free healthcare, but with what's called Petals counselling, which is the counselling I had, which is for parents who've struggled with loss and trauma, you get 6 sessions free on the NHS. And I felt like I was being rushed through the free sessions so that we could get to the paid sessions, if that makes sense. And maybe that's not the case, but that's how I felt. We weren't really getting anywhere. I wasn't being given any advice on how to deal with intrusive thoughts, for example, or how to calm myself down if I was having a panic attack. I was just kind of being asked, oh, what's your relationship with your mother like? Why don't you like it when people don't listen to you? And there were questions that I thought, no one likes it when people don't listen to you. Why would you make this about that's not my problem. My problem is that I panic when I'm out in public with my daughter, and I'm scared of, I wouldn't take her to cities because I was afraid that something would happen. And when I do take her to cities, I take her in the running buggy so that if anything does happen, we can leg it.
Yeah. Oh, you're so sweet. Hey, you always have to have a plan B sometimes, right?
I feel like mom life, I'm not a mom, but I feel like mom life is just a lifelong journey of knowing what plan B is.
Yeah, probably.
Plan Z, because when does A through Y work?
Yeah.
So did the therapist recommend the running, or was that like you being like, one day you left session and you were like, I'm done with this? Like,
well, because I'd run before, I know that when you go for a really good hard run, you get the endorphins, you feel a lot better. And so I think that's when I really started doing distance running. After I had my first daughter, I was absolutely thrilled that the only place she would sleep is in my running buggy. So once she got 6 months old, we were flying, we were running around everywhere. And we did used to have a local running buggy track. I think it used to be once a month, there was a little running buggy competition. So she got little certificates and medals for going around with me. We used to take the dog as well. It was really friendly. And Mark used to let us take the dog. So I'd run around with the dog and the baby, and we'd all get a certificate and a medal. And it just felt so much better after having a run. So I got to the point where I knew that if I did a certain amount of running in a week, that the anxiety would be quelled. It would, the rate was caged, so to speak.
Right.
But then we decided we wanted another baby. And I thought, because we'd had the diagnosis and we knew the plan, we knew that I would need to have injections of deltaparin, which is a blood thinner. I'd have to take aspirin. That once we did conceive again, it would be simple. Right. But it wasn't. We had 3 months. And the doctors couldn't tell us why. They just said sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. We think it's to do with implantation, but we don't really know. So It's just a case of keep trying and eventually one will stick. And that was literally the medical advice we were getting. So I got to a point where I think I'd almost given up. When I actually was pregnant with my youngest daughter, I did think I'd lost her. I started miscarrying at work, or I thought I'd started miscarrying at work. I went home, I actually took her to see Frozen 2. I took my youngest daughter to see Frozen 2 on a matinee because I'd gone home from work, and I just thought, right, I'm not making this all negative. If we've lost it, we've lost it. There's nothing I can do. I'm going to take Penny to see Frozen 2. She's my oldest. And it was like 2:00 in the afternoon or something. I wasn't ready for what happened to Olaf in that film after what happened to me that day. I was not ready for that.
You're like, she's like, Mommy, why are you crying? You're like, oh, don't worry about it. Oh.
Nobody warned me. They didn't tell me this.
I still have not seen it, but it must be heartbreaking. Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't ready for Olaf to just... I won't, no spoilers here, but I was not ready for that. And I did, yeah, it wasn't a good day. So obviously I went for a run.
What do I have control of where, like...
Yeah,
I'm not just gonna fall apart.
So yeah, that's what I did. And then I ran the whole way through my pregnancy with Octavia, which is my second child. She's called Octavia because she's the 8th, because we lost 6 and had 2. So
wow, I was just gonna ask that. Wow,
that just hit me right in the feels. That's so
me
cool.
too. I have goosebumps. I love that.
I love that. Cool.
You honored all of them, right? I mean, that's the way you did it. That's beautiful.
I would have actually been quite upset if she was a boy, because I couldn't name him Augustus. I couldn't do that.
Oh my God, talk about like true rainbow baby.
Both of my girls are rainbow babies, yeah. Both of them are my little rainbows. Yeah. And I think really running, especially long distance running, gives you a lot of time to think. So Absolutely. I've kind of worked my way through to a manageable emotive state, I would say, through running. So I've kind of got to the point where I can accept that if I hadn't gone through this, I wouldn't have the children I have. Because I would never have had Penny, because I would have had the first baby and it wouldn't have been Penny. So I've just kind of accepted that in order to get my kids, that was the journey I had to take.
Yep.
That's a really empowered,
positive way. And it's a positive way to look at it. And so very proud of you, Zoe. Very proud of you.
Miles for that to be my realization.
So I have to ask, as a runner, I can only imagine. I've never run. The longest I've run, I've done the Disney World Dopey Challenge twice. It's 48.6 miles through Disney over 4 days.
I love it.
Those, I have 2 pairs of Mickey ears that are like prized possessions. You only get them for finishing the marathon.
I love it.
Like, anyway, I was going to ask you, did you ever just think to yourself when you're running, like if someone made a comic book strip of my thoughts, they would institutionalize me?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yep.
Like literally in 1 second, you are like the most manic. The world is great. You are a rock star. You are unstoppable. And it can literally be half a second later, and you are in this darkest, deepest hole that you're like, why did I think I could do this? Everything that's ever gone wrong in your life is like channeling through you. And then like give it another mile and you're back to being fine again. It's the wildest thing.
Start to cry, isn't it? It's when you get to that point and you start to cry and you can feel it and you can feel your lungs just going, no, there's no air here for you. You can't run anymore. Yep. And you go, I've got to calm down because I can't run and cry at the same time. Yeah. Which is not true of the Peloton. I can cried, which is what I call my crying rides on the Peloton.
I love that. That's the quote for today. You can cry and ride at the same time.
I love that. Let it go. Release, release, release.
You know, exactly. I never really thought about this part, Zoe, but do you think, when you think back on it, do you think that experience of being physically active and mentally having the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, it bundled at the same time, has prepared you for like being able to navigate everyday life?
Definitely. Like I said, when I was younger, I did not have the mental strength to run as far as I do now.
Mhm.
But the long distance running that I was doing to kind of channel emotions, to cage my rage, I can now, I've got them, like, you know, when I started my 100K race, I knew I was finishing it. I wasn't not going to finish. I might not have been fast, I might have gone slower than I wanted, but there was no doubt in my mind when I started that race that I was finishing it. And I didn't have that mental strength when I was younger. And I think the running and the journey I've got to get here helped me a great deal with that. And I am now significantly mentally stronger than I was before. And
Yeah.
that obviously I've raised two strong and confident women.
That's right. I
Yeah,
love
you
that.
have.
With tiny versions of myself on a daily basis.
I love it. Phenomenal.
So
Good
hard.
job.
They're way too intelligent as well. They outsmart me continuously.
How old are
They're
they?
gonna keep you on your toes.
Is 5, she'll be 6 in October, and Octavia was 3 in July.
Wow.
What fun ages.
Perfect.
So at what point did you end up in the ER?
Phase, and Octavia's just started it, so that's cool.
I'm sorry, there was a delay. What'd you say, Zoe?
I said Penelope's just got through the screeching phase, and Octavia's now just started it, so that's fun.
Perfect. Perfect. That's hilarious.
Get in the buggy, we're going for a run. Scream into the wilderness.
I had to upgrade to a double buggy, so we now just get in, off we get. It's also a bike trailer, which is great for going to the village next door.
I love
No,
that.
sorry, I have mad respect for moms and strollers, for all parents and strollers, because it's hard enough to move your own body, yet alone push a stroller full of dead weight.
Yeah,
Wiggling
that's
dead
good.
weight.
The good thing is that they do watch Bluey on the tablet, and through the chariot window, I can watch Bluey while I'm running.
Oh, perfect. So if your mind starts to wander, you're like, Bluey, let's stay on track.
Yeah, advice from Australian cartoons. Yeah.
Perfect. That's wonderful.
So at what point did you end up in the hospital where they said no more running, Zoe?
So I got to the point I was having trouble with my knee, and it just kind of got worse and worse, and it didn't get any better. And it got to a point where it was extremely swollen and there was fluid in the knee. And when I knelt down, I could sort of feel the fluid squeeze out from underneath and then back in. I went to, we used to have an event called Run Fest in the UK. It hasn't happened for a couple of years now, but I went to Run Fest and I accidentally bumped into an orthopedic surgeon. He said, that's not right. You need to get your doctor can't keep, because I'd said, I'd been to the GP and they just said rest, ice. I'd been having physio and they just kept giving me some exercises that made it worse, and then just said rest it. And every 6 weeks I went back for more physio and they said rest it for another 6 weeks, rest it for another 6 weeks. And he said, no, you need to go to a hospital. That's not okay. So I got an appointment with not my local hospital, but a renowned hospital local to where I live. And they did an x-ray. And when the guy looked at the x-ray and he said, you don't have enough cartilage on one side of your knee. And every other sentence that he was explaining it to me, he just said, you're too young for a knee replacement. You're too young for a knee replacement. And I was like, what? What? And he said, well, you need an MRI and you'll need to speak to the consultant. So we'll book the MRI. So I thought, okay, well, we'll book the MRI. We'll see what the MRI says. So the MRI came back and said that I'd got holes in the cartilage in my knee, basically. Wow. It's degraded to a point where I've got an 8 millimeter hole underneath my kneecap. There's various bits where it's thinner on one side than it is on the other. So in my knee, it should have an even amount of space between the bones in my knee. And on one side, it's about that big. And on the other side, it's about that big. So that side's okay. I never actually got to speak to the consultant. One of his registrars phoned me with the results of the MRI while I was on the Peloton, thankfully, to say, we've got the results, I've had a look. We can offer you a surgery that's called an arthroscopy to go in and just take out any loose cartilage. And it might mean that you can then walk around again. At the time, I was when I walked, and weather really, really affected my knee. So if it was cold and it was wet, it just had that like bone ache.
Where an 80-year-old lady who's predicting the weather.
Exactly, from my knees. Yeah, I knew when I woke up, and it would, if it was like that overnight, then it would still be painful overnight. So you're not getting any sleep. I'm trying to do things. I've got 2 big dogs, and they poop a lot. You've got to scoop that, and bending down to get the poop, getting things in and out of the washing machine was just crippling, and my knee would just constantly give way. At work, I work on a school site that's enormous, so I get about 1,000 steps in from my car to my classroom, and
that is huge.
It's very spread out. And I just couldn't, I couldn't run after my daughter if she was learning to ride her bike. I couldn't catch up with her on the scooter because it was just too painful. My knee would give way. And so a little bit before, once we'd seen the original gentleman who did the x-ray, he said, low impact exercise should be fine, which is when my husband said, look, you're not coping. You're emotionally destroyed. You're really unhappy because I hadn't been able to for such a long time. So why don't I get you a Peloton and we'll see how it goes. I honestly thought I'd be sending that bad boy back on the 30-day guarantee. I was like, I hate bikes. I can't sit on them. They've always hurt me. It's boring. I'm not going to do it. And about a week in, I was like, you'll have to prize it from my cold, dead hands because I love it.
And this is where we do the Peloton ad. No, I'm just kidding.
Right? We should.
How amazing it is.
There's a Watt bike, an Echelon, there's loads, but just I don't know what it was. I think it's some of the instructors. There's obviously an awful lot of psychology that's gone into what the instructors say, how they say it. And I'm sure it's the same with all, spin classes and the online exercise bikes. And it put a lot of strength into my leg that I hadn't trained into it before. So when this guy phoned me up and said, we can offer you this arthroscopy, you might be able to walk without pain. And I said, look, if you can say to me, I will be able to walk around without pain, without the might, without the maybe, then I'll consider it. And he said, well, you might be able to. Okay. So I said,
so what really went through your head when he said that? Like, what went through your body? Like, what went through your mind? Like, what was the real deal?
I was all right until I asked, what if I ran on a treadmill? Because treadmills have shock absorbers.
Oh, that's true.
He just said, you will never run again without pain. You won't be able to run on a road and you should stop running.
No,
at this
that's
point,
not the answer.
The cry began. So I was hyperventilating. I was just like, no, this cannot be the end of running. I need running. I love running. It's part of my life. I identify as a runner. It's who I am. I can't not run, and so I'm gripping the handlebars, just like crying with Emma Lovewell. This guy's still on the phone while I'm doing this, and I can hear in his voice that he thinks I'm overreacting. He thinks it's funny. He's not being. I said, why has this happened? How has this happened? And he just said, well, it's the geometry of your bones. I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, that makes no sense.
Bones? What bones? How? And I said, will it happen to the other knee? And he said, well, I don't know. We didn't look at that knee. Well, yes, but will it happen? Well, I don't know. And he'd also mentioned that it was probably genetic. So I said, will this happen to my children? He said, I don't know. We don't look at that. Right. Okay. I said, will this get worse with menopause? He said, I don't know. Probably not.
That's
maybe.
Really great questions, Zoe. Those are great questions. I feel like most people don't need to ask.
I had written a list prior to the phone call because I knew I was getting this.
You were prepared.
With my husband, I was prepared. And I said, would wearing different shoes make a difference to the pain? No, probably not. Nothing. You don't need anything special. We'll just book you in for the arthroscopy. So they booked the appointment, and I cancelled the surgery. Yeah. And I asked for a referral through my GP to our National Orthopaedic Hospital called Stanmore Hospital in London. They did an x-ray. It was the most amazing x-ray. The lady, the radiologist, was the loveliest person, and she like commented my leisure attire. She was like, "Oh, nice leggings," which is always nice. And they did an x-ray all the way from my hips, both legs, all the way down. So they did this x-ray of multiple pictures that were pieced together to see my whole legs. And they said,
truly actually treating you as a person and not just one symptom.
Well, yeah,
exactly.
and then because you could be off in your hips, and it could be the hips and not the knees. Like it could be, people just think, oh, just go to the source, and you're connected. I work at a chiropractic office, just so you know. So yeah, I'm glad that they did more than just the knee. Awesome.
There's like, I don't know why you've been told that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with your bone alignment. They're all beautifully in line. So this has all been caused by muscle weaknesses in my legs. So had I known that, had better advice when I was younger, maybe, I would have done a lot more strengthening exercises to those legs, and it potentially probably would still have got osteoarthritis, but it would not be as degraded as it is, because the cartilage wouldn't have been rubbing on each other in the way that they have done to get to where they are. So they sent me to a physio, and the physio and the bike riding basically gave me enough strength to hold the knee how it properly should be, so that it isn't bashing, scraping, or crashing around. The osteoarthritis is still there. It won't get better. I can't make it better, but it isn't getting worse. And my leg is definitely stronger. I'm faster now than I was before this happened.
Good job.
I want to pause for a second, because I think that's really what I heard was really, really important. And it was that, you know what, like, one, you went to the doctor, said this is what's going on, and got a diagnosis that one was, we can give you surgery and you might have a better quality of life, but probably not, but you need the surgery anyway, and this is it, and move on. This is how your life is going to be. And I love that even if that was the answer, mentally, you were mentally strong enough to go, I don't accept this yet. Let me do a little bit more before, like, I accept this as my fate, and then work with that. And then two, like, really listening to your own body and advocating for yourself. Because I don't know about in the UK, but in the US, like, you are frowned upon almost for advocating for yourself. A lot of times if you go to the doctor because something hurts, it's you need to lose weight. No one's going to look at you. Everything that's wrong with you if you're overweight is because of your weight, not because anything else could be wrong. And then why are you questioning me? I'm the one who went to med school, which I respect. I did not go to med school, but I also can tell you I'm the expert in how my body feels. Correct. And this isn't right. And so, like, I really just want those people that are listening with us and sitting here chatting with us right now, like, you are the expert in your body, and that, like, it's okay to speak up. Like, if Zoe hadn't spoken up and asked all the great questions and, like, not accepted the first answer as her, like, forever fate, and was like, okay, well, what do I have control over? She wouldn't be this version of herself right now, still running around after her kids. She'd probably be watching them from a park bench, feeling pretty depressed, if not to put words in your mouth. That's how I would feel.
Absolutely. I genuinely, I cried for what me and Emma Lovewell, we were crying for 20 minutes on that ride. She wasn't, obviously. She was oblivious because she's a recording. I was crying. I felt like we were crying together. We weren't. It wasn't. It was all fake.
We were crying together. She was there with you, and that's exactly where she wanted to be and needed to be. It's very true.
I found it really challenging to go from, I had a niggle, it got worse, and now it's a full stop. My brain couldn't work out how it had got from this hurts a bit more, now this is painful all the time, but there was never an impact of, there was never anything devastating that happened to that leg. It just went from, oh, this hurts a bit, to someone phoning me and saying, you can never do the things that you have done before, and you won't ever be able to do that. So one of the things I did was I had a look at other hospital options. I knew about Stanmore because my dad had been treated there previously, and I looked at their options. And just with their surgical options, their arthroscopies, there's about 5 different types of them. So the hospital I was at just does arthroscopies and one sort, and that's it. That's all they offer. That's all they can do. So part of the problem, I thought, was that if there were better treatments, the hospital were just unable to offer it to me anyway, because they just don't do them at that hospital. So
you knew there had to be another option.
Yeah, I asked for a referral. So one of the things that they do at Stanmore, it's not something that obviously I have, but it might be something that I need in the future, is they do an arthroscopy, but then they drill lots of tiny little holes into your cartilage to stimulate growth of bone marrow and things like that. So there's an insane amount of stuff that they can do. They also have a trial procedure where they grow stem cells and then implant them in there to try and stimulate cartilage. But if you have had previous arthroscopies, it precludes you from that surgery. You can't have. So I'm not going through with this surgery that might help, because ultimately, if I do need surgery, I want to be at the place where I can have that, I want the best surgery that can be possible. And I'd rather walk around. I said to my husband, I'd rather walk around in pain for 5 years and know it can be fixed later than stop now and never be able to do it again.
Yeah.
That's fair.
So we went to Stanmore, and ultimately I have avoided surgery thus far. I'm still with Stanmore, so they give me an appointment every 2 years. So I go back every 2 years to check for anything.
Check it out.
And it might be that in the future I have to go with surgery. But at the moment, I've managed to strengthen my leg through weight training, which I never used to do before. I've done a lot more weight training, and the physio exercises have been very weird and wonderful. They're focused on single leg stability. So when I first went, the guy said, "Can you stand on one leg?" I said, "Yeah, sure, stand on one leg. I'm a runner, can stand on one leg." He said, "Can you close your eyes?" Straight over I went. Straight, I'm not kidding, straight down.
No flamingos. You're not a flamingo in your previous life?
And it just, the second I closed my eyes, I just went, that was it. And he was like, "Right, feel like we need to work on that." So there's a huge amount of single leg stability. So, the single leg sit up and stand ups from getting in and out of chairs, Bosu balls, balancing on doing single leg stand ups on my Bosu ball. I now have to do this thing where I stand in a squat on the Bosu ball while my husband throws a weighted ball.
Phenomenal. And you have to.
In unpredictable places, so that I have to constantly compensate for it and use all the stabilizing muscles in my legs.
And it's really preparing you for becoming an old lady and not losing your mobility.
Very true. And longevity of life, honestly, if you can balance on one leg like that and be able to navigate that, you are going to live long, Miss Zoe.
This is it. I'm 42 next week, the meaning of life, the universe and everything.
Happy birthday.
Very excited to be 42. I know a lot of rational people are not, but I am thrilled to be 42.
Good.
Aging is not a gift everyone is allowed to experience.
That's very true.
It's a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy thing. I'm very excited to be 42.
I need to read those. I have never.
I'm going to be making myself a t-shirt that says, "I am the meaning of life, the universe and everything." It's happening.
I love that. Do you have any advice for like moms out there trying to keep up with their kids that like have done nothing and they might not have injured themselves, but like what advice, or just people out there who are just sedentary, who, don't know where to go or what to even start with. And they're thinking like, how do I even get off the couch and walk a mile, let alone run 62, is there any special advice or tools that you can give the audience today?
Well, I think just go slow, go at your own pace, but just keep doing it. It's consistency, it's building it up. For me, the strength work was hard. It wasn't something I was used to doing. It wasn't something I enjoyed doing to begin with. I'm now up to a 9.1 kilo dumbbell, which I was like, I don't know, there's this set in the UK that most people's parents had that they somehow now have from their parents. That's like a pink one, a green one and a blue one. And the highest one on there is 4.5 kilos. And I only ever used the 2.5 kilo ones initially. And I thought that was really hard. I would do like a split squat with 2.5 kilo dumbbells and I'd get DOMs and it would feel hard. And now I do them with 9.1 kilos. Obviously, there's 2 dumbbells of 9.1 kilo each. And so, but doing that consistently was the hardest thing. Hardest thing wasn't building the muscle, because that comes quite quickly once you start exercising. It was just the consistency to do it even when I didn't want to. So yeah, if you're trying to walk, get a dog, borrow a dog.
Borrow a dog.
Get a dog, go for a walk with a dog. I'm always a bit nervous when I'm in the woods with the dog and someone just strolls out without one. I'm like, who have you been burying in the woods?
Yeah, that's so true. You're freaked out.
I think that's really important though, because I know that like, as someone who loves running and loves exercising, I very much relate to that. Like anytime I've had an injury, like it's almost like it challenged my identity, because it's like, what do you mean? Like, who would I be without that thing? Because that thing has become the like foundation of who I am as a person and how I show up in the world. So like, what do you mean I can't do that thing? And I think it's really important for those people who don't get that, because maybe they have not found that as their foundation, or they're like, oh, big deal, you couldn't run. Oh, sad for you. Like, find a new hobby. Welcome to the rest of the world. But I think that it is really important. I love that you shared, you know, like I was struggling to play with my kids. Like, take running off the table. I couldn't be there with my kids without constantly being in pain. And I think that that's really real. And I think people overlook that a lot. And
I mean, that's why I run. My daughter says to me, you know, when I go into a race, she goes, are you going to win, mummy? And I say, no, I don't run to win. I run because I like doing it and I want to take part. I know I'm going to finish. But ultimately, I had children quite late in life. Okay, so we had fertility struggles and that made it take longer, which means that when children have children, you know, I'm going to be 60, maybe 70. If they wait as long as I did, I need to be physically fit and strong to be useful for them. I want to look after my grandchildren should they choose to have any grandchildren. I want to look after them. I want to be helpful to my kids. I want to be able to help them move house, help them go to university. You know, I want to do all those things for them, and I can't do that if I can barely walk now. In 20, 30 years, I'm going to be completely useless to them or a burden to them. And I don't want that to happen. I want to be strong into my old age so that I can, you know, be that 80-year-old that runs marathons.
I love it.
So
and we're going to do it.
So my daughter's children around the house and keep up with them.
You're going to do it, Zoe. I feel it. I feel it in my bones, in my kneecaps. I feel it.
In my weather app, I feel it.
I do. I really do feel it. I love that. And I love that you're living for them. Like, that's what people need to recognize. Sometimes living just for yourself, actually, most of the time, it's not enough. You have to find somebody that makes you get up and do that consistency, get up and keep fighting, get up and do better, you know, and find another way. And you have to find whatever that is for you that gets you off the couch, gets you walking, gets you doing your strength training, gets you going after your next goal. And sometimes it's more than just you, right? It's something else that motivates you or keeps you going. So I love that that's your kids. And thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. That was amazing.
I feel so inspired right now. Like, I love this chat. I'm so happy that the time worked out. So if you got to share one message with the person that's listening to us right now, sitting on the couch with us, like, what's the one thing that you want to make sure people walk away with?
I have never regretted exercising. I have hated it. I have endured it. I've been in pain doing it. I've hurt myself doing it. I've done it irresponsibly. I've done it stupidly, but I've never, ever regretted it. And I've always felt better after I've done it.
That is so true. I feel the same way. That's real.
How do people follow you in your journey?
Well, they can follow me on Instagram if they want to. I'm at We Spark Joy. That's pretty much it, really. I'm way too old to be on TikTok. Well, no, that's not for me.
No worries. And we'll drop that in the show notes so that everyone can connect. And Zoe, thank you so, so much for opening your heart and sharing your words. And with that, Chelsea.
This is Two Humans Talking. Bye.